WECB Headland, WJRL Slocum, WESP Dothan, and WBBK Blakely Dothan. Welcome to Wiregrass Strong, the Reboot, your weekly dose of local COVID-19 related information, brought to you as a public service of Knights Wrecker Service, with locations in Ashford, Headland, and Dothan. Call Knights Wrecker at 899-3257. Wiregrass Strong, the Reboot, is streaming live on Facebook at B1053 and on YouTube at Wiregrass Radio. Our phone lines are open at 699-1053, or you can chat with us live online. And welcome to Wiregrass Strong for a Wednesday afternoon. And normally our show is mainly centered around COVID-19. And unfortunately, we are experiencing a spike in the numbers, and we'll keep a close eye on that. But it's our weekly update here on the air with some topical issues we need to discuss. And I'd like to welcome our guest. It is Precious Freeman. Precious, thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
Also, our Chief of Police, Steve Parrish, is here with us.
Glad to be back with you.
And Mr. Marcus Cage from the People Station Magic 93.1. Marcus.
Good afternoon. It's been a while since I've been here.
It has been a while. We went from doing it every day because we needed to. We needed to talk about it. We went 8 weeks solid doing it every weekday at 5 to 5:30. And then we cut back as things started getting back, trying to get back to normal. We started cutting back to once a week, but there's always something that needs to be discussed, and community issues. I'd like to remind you this half hour is brought to you as a public service of Knights Wrecker Service. Big or small, they do it all. 899-3257. Again, we are streaming live on Facebook at Wiregrass Radio and broadcasting on all four of our signals: WECB in Headland, WJRL Slocum, WESP in Dothan, and WBBK in Blakely, Dothan. And Marcus is going to go ahead and take over at this point, and I'll moderate. So, Marcus, if you would.
Oh, just throw it. And
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Marcus.
Well, of course, a lot of things has been going on in the past couple of weeks, especially in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and Atlanta, Georgia, and a lot of places around the area, dealing with overly aggressive police tactics being used to make arrests on individuals. And we wanted to speak with the police chief about race relations in the area, as well as what we should be seeing in our area. And we also have Miss Precious Freeman. Precious, you are the director of the Carver Museum. Is that the correct?
Yeah.
What we could call? What we say?
Yeah, I'll put that hat on. That's the hat I'm wearing today.
Okay. Well, she is director of the G.W. Carver Interpretive Museum here in Dothan, also. And there's a lot of things that we can talk about. And let's just get right on into the questions. Precious, I want to ask you the first one: is what after the Minneapolis incident and the Atlanta incidents, have you noticed how, if anything, has it affected this area?
Oh, yeah. So I was actually talking about this earlier today. This is the first time I've seen where we've had an incident like this occur and the entire country is mourning. There's not I don't think there's a community you can find where there's not at least one person that feels impacted by this. And it's not specific to any one race either. I think everyone generally feels like, okay, this wasn't right. I don't feel right about it, and I feel like I should do something. I've noticed just a lot of people wanting to act. And a lot of people have reached out to me personally. They've reached out to the Carver Museum and asking, like, what can I do next? Because people don't want to just jump into reckless action, at least in our area. But I'm seeing is people want to do something meaningful that's going to move us all forward together. So that's the biggest thing I've seen as far as how it's impacted the Dothan area.
Right. And Chief, how has this initiated any changes of policies or anything differently as far as the way that police respond or react on the streets?
You know, and I couldn't hear what Precious. Yes, we are certainly conscious of of the way that we're policing. With regard to the situation in Minneapolis and Atlanta, it's a horrible thing. It sheds a negative light on law enforcement all over the country. I don't know of any police administrator, any police officer that I've spoken with at all that thinks that what happened in Minneapolis particularly was condoned in any way. The individuals that were responsible have been charged. I think they should have been. I think that as police administrators, we have to hold our people to a higher standard. We have to have effective training, and we have to have counseling and tracking of police officers' conduct and things like that. And fortunately, we do a lot of that at the police department. We answer hundreds of thousands of calls a year, and we track every complaint. You can write it on a napkin, and we'll investigate it. We have a standalone internal affairs division, so we're very conscious of the way we monitor our police officers. And in times like this, it's particularly important that police understand the community dynamic, because we've seen what's happened all over the country, and it's a horrible thing that protests can go from peaceful to violent to destructive, and police are right now at the forefront of a lot of that anger, so we have to be conscious of that.
Now, speaking of your training, are there any policy, or is there any psychological training or any counseling available for career officers, or is something being put in place?
Well, whenever an officer is hired, and I have to speak only for the Dothan Police Department, but whenever we have an officer hired here, they go through an extensive background check, which includes psychological evaluation, not only in testing, but they actually have to be evaluated by a psychiatrist, and those reports come to us before we hire them. That's just one part of the process. The other, of course, is we do the polygraph examination and the extensive background investigations, and we turn away a lot more people than most people would think for one reason or another.
Okay. And do you think that there will be stricter guidelines after these events, or will the city remain going in the same direction with hiring?
I think since the personnel department oversees the hiring process, I certainly think that discussions are in order with personnel or human resources, as most places call it, in evaluating the way we do that. Because we've heard this over and over again, and I don't want to pound it in too hard, but there are bad apples in every organization, whether it's lawyers, doctors, police officers, or whatever. And we have to identify those, and we have to catch those before they harm an entire community. And that's what we've seen in Minneapolis and really Atlanta as well.
Chief, I have a question. One of the concerns in the community in the police force is that they can't find enough qualified officers or qualified individuals who want to be peace officers, so they're having to go from outside the community, even distances, states away, who aren't familiar with the community, and that may in some way add to the issue. Are we having an issue with that here, trying to find qualified personnel to be peace officers?
We have had a pretty high turnover rate. I think that some of the commission and the city manager are doing some things right now to try to address that. But I think, yes, we do hire quite a few people from not from our area, but a lot of that you will see will be mainly Fort Rucker, maybe retirees or soldiers who are leaving there, coming here. But I love to hire local people. I love to have people who know our culture. Precious and I have done some some work in the past, and I know she knows that what we have a program we call Hire Dothan, where we want to use our police foundation and our new Wiregrass training center to cultivate the young people to want to police in our community. I want the kid who lives in Johnson Homes or in Martin Homes to want to be a police officer in Dothan, because he's got a vested interest in this community, and that's what's so important to me.
Now, you spoke about you and Precious actually doing a lot of things dealing with race relations in the past. Precious, can you touch on some of those things that you've
Yeah,
been involved in?
primarily we're talking about Blueprint City. So through Blueprint City, we were able to. Can you hear me? I feel like you can hear me now.
I can hear you now.
Through Blueprint City, we were able to do some really cool work across several categories: affordable housing, business, education, policing being one, and spiritual. And so through the policing, one of the things that was addressed was the website, but also a better police presence in the community, as far as when people see the police, not being afraid, but wanting to engage. That was a chance for them to tell us some of the things they were already working on in his strategic plan, like community policing was already a big part of what he was going to do. And he was able to use Blueprint City to kind of get that out there further. I think you guys also started participating in Soccer Fest, not just as the police were there to make sure you don't do something bad, but also being there, handing out things, and having a booth set up. And that was something that was done through the Police Foundation. So that's what he's talking about, some of the work that we've done. Also through the Dothan Community Relations Group, being able to take community concerns back to Chief Parrish. And also Chief Parrish attended most of our meetings, and he'd bring team members with him as well. And they'd be able to directly answer questions. And he would be honest when people would say, hey, there was a young man walking down the street the other night and he feels like he was profiled, so they could actually have this conversation about some concerns that people have in the community. I think that there's work to be done still nationwide, and I'm sure that Chief Parrish fully understands that. And so my hope and prayer is that we're able as a community to get so far ahead that we can become an example. I know that's a hard thing to do, so I'm not going to put any pressure. I'm not trying to put pressure on anyone. But I think that it's possible with the people that we have in our community. There's a lot of good people here. So
do you have anything else coming up soon?
Well,
that I can jump into again.
Yeah, because you were a part of a lot of different things that we've done. Chief Parrish may have to tell you that Blueprint City is always something that we're discussing behind the scenes, especially with Mayor Saliba and former Mayor Mike Schmidt. So I'm pretty sure that we'll be hopping into action. Right now, my focus has been on when I hear from people, which again has been a lot, just helping to point people in a direction where they can feel like they're doing something that's meaningful and moving us forward. As far as like, Precious, what do I do next? I feel horrible. I don't like the way I feel. Just being able to point people in the right direction so that some good can come out of the sadness that we're all experiencing.
Well, great. And Chief, she spoke of the outreach programs that you've been trying to put together to make communities safer as well as more comfortable with police. How's that coming along?
Well, the COVID-19 thing, I think everybody can understand, certainly had an impact on how we could do some of our programs. For example, we had 3 community, junior police academies scheduled for this summer. Those are off. I was talking with Dr. Edwards and Chairman Smits about a law enforcement career academy with some kids from the school systems this summer at the Wiregrass Training Center. Just good stuff, developing curriculum that would be the template for a program to launch once school started, to actually get the kids in our high school out to our training center to do police and fire training and things like that. So unfortunately, those programs are put on hold, but they're not dead. I mean, they're part of our strategic plan. We're still going to get them going. We just got to get past this COVID stuff. And I think now more than ever, as we all understand and realize, is the need for the community to bridge the gap with the police department and the city government to bridge a gap. And I think a lot of that is just us doing a better job as a city government and communicating what we're trying to do. We're our own worst enemy sometimes. I'll tell my guys, hey, you do a good job, but are we telling the community that we're doing a good job? That's where we fall short. We get in a rut of doing our job and staying busy, and we forget to tell people what we're doing, and it's really frustrating.
Well, it's 1:15. I want to take this opportunity to say this half hour is brought to you as a public service of Knights Wrecker Service. And we also want to remind folks, just touching on the COVID issue and the social distancing issue, July 14th is quickly approaching. That is our primary runoff. And if you want to absentee ballot, you need to do it real quick. Okay. And also do not fall short on filling out your census. Get online and take care of that, because that helps us all. We've got to have those numbers. Okay, Marcus.
Okay, we have getting into a little bit more of a serious issues, especially what happened with Atlanta and in Minneapolis. I think one question that is on a lot of people's mind, especially maybe here in the Wiregrass, is the use of force, the use of less than lethal force and the use of lethal force. According to the Dothan police, what is the steps from de-escalating to escalating? What steps should an officer take?
Well, a lot of people refer to that as a use of force continuum. We realize that you may go from a casual conversation to a deadly encounter without having the time to go through the steps. So, it starts out with just the verbal commands and the verbal interaction, and then, it could escalate up to that. But I think with really what you're talking about here and what we're all focused on is the incident with the taser. I watched the video. That was, in my opinion, deadly force was not authorized in that situation. Now, unlike so many others, I don't want to armchair quarterback it. I only know what I saw. But the elements really that you have to have, and I'm sure Georgia law is similar to Alabama law, in that you can't shoot a fleeing felon or a fleeing person unless you have reason to believe that they are going to get away from you and potentially kill someone else, cause serious bodily harm or death to another person. In that case, you could deploy deadly force, but from the way it appeared, from my chair, there were multiple officers there. They had an encounter. It was a violent encounter. The taser was taken, and the individual began to flee. Now, once he began to flee, the dynamics of the use of force policy probably should have been considered further. Now, when the individual turned and fired the taser, and I don't know this, but it appeared that the taser deployed and maybe either partially struck the officer or missed him completely, and the individual kept running, and then the officer discharged his weapon, shooting the individual in the back. And if the officers cannot articulate that the individual who was fleeing was going to hurt someone else, then they would have a problem with engaging that individual with deadly force. You can always get them at a later time. Those are things that you have to consider. So, and that comes down to training and experience. There's no substitute for that. So.
And one thing that I know a lot of people are concerned of is when an officer does use deadly force, that he's not using it out of fear or over anticipation. What type of training is available for officers so that, I have an issue when a person of suspicion is being detained, and they're supposed to remain calm, but yet we've seen in media, which has blown up a lot of things, we've seen in media that it's the officers that are more anxious and almost fearful. So is there anything in place dealing with Dothan that can reassure that our officers here are remaining calm?
That's a very good point, and you've touched on it at least twice already, and that's where you use the phrase de-escalation. We don't have de-escalation training. We train in de-escalation. So that's kind of, you think about it a minute, say, okay, well, how do you do that? Well, let's use the new training center, for example. We have a simulator in that facility where officers have to go through that, and they use scenarios, and based on their reactions during the scenario, the person operating, the training officer operating the machine, can have the person comply or can have the person not comply. And in doing that, the trainer is trained to, as long as the officer's saying and doing the right things and giving the right commands, have the person comply and put them in those de-escalating type of scenarios to where when they do get on the street, hopefully they won't be too anxious, they won't be overzealous, and they'll act accordingly. And in experience, I've said it twice, there's no substitute for getting out there and doing it. So, that's kind of how we do the de-escalation training. And it seems to be working well so far. We do track the complaints that come in for a department our size with the number of calls for service we have. They're relatively low. I think we could do a better job with informing the public of those statistics, at the end of the year, for example.
Right. Okay. So now in 2017, Dothan has done something that a lot of agencies have not done. And that's, with the body cams. Is there anything that, that will, are there any kind of disciplinary actions if a body cam happens to fail during a situation?
Outstanding question. This came up at the commission meeting Tuesday, and I explained it to the commissioners, because what we've done is there was a resolution put forward that'll be on the next agenda for the city commit to $1,387,000 on a 5-year contract to the body camera company that we use. It happens to be Utility Associates. And let me back up, and Precious will probably remembers a little bit about this from the survey that we did in the community back in 2017. One of the overwhelming, and this was a scientific survey completed by Troy University, and the number one glaring stat in that survey, as she could tell you, is that the number of citizens across the board, regardless of what community they're from, regardless of their social economic status, like 95% of the people that were polled wanted body cameras on police. So in 2017, we implemented that program. It was $684,000 to get started with the program. We received a $200,000 grant, and we put body cameras on every officer. And I say all that to get to the point. There are fail safes in this particular system that makes it that expensive. For example, if the officer falls down, it'll come on. If he starts running, it'll come on. It comes on by itself. Now, he can turn it on, and he could probably turn it off, but we audit that as well. And there are disciplinary actions that come with that if we catch them doing that. But it's not been a problem, because every shift, the shift supervisors have to randomly look at officers' body camera footage to make sure, even on standard calls, that it's operating as it should. And the way the system is set up, you can't tamper with it. And with that said, this new contract is going to actually trigger the camera to come on if the officer removes his weapon from his holster. So the technology has advanced. So now more than ever, the body cameras are becoming the norm, and they should. A lot of people think that, well, police don't like the body cam. We love them, okay? Because it takes me just a few minutes to pull the body camera footage and see if officer did right, did wrong, within policy, not within policy. And we, handle it accordingly. So the police officers actually like it, and the community likes it. So it's really a win-win.
Okay. Out of curiosity, just my curiosity, if an incident does occur, would the body cameras be made available to public viewing?
That's a very good question, and the answer to that is, we have a legal department that would make that decision ultimately. But I can tell you that um, if there was a situation like, say, what happened in Atlanta, that would be a decision that I would make, and I would release it. Uh, as far as releasing it at will, I know there's been some push and some litigation from some media outlets to, well, make the police release everything. Well, I'm not really opposed to that, but the problem with that is I'd have to hire an extra person to answer the demand, because if you just had somebody that had to provide these things over and over and over on everybody, you have to screen to make sure there's no juvenile involved or no address is shown. You'd have to do redaction. So I don't, if I was a member of the media, I would want unlimited access to it as well. But for practical reasons, I don't think that would be good for us, even though we would do it if it got enacted into law. So to answer your question, in some instances, yes, we would.
Okay. And if the public has any kind of concerns with officers or policies and procedures, how do they get in touch with you?
Just call the police department, call whatever number you want to, except 911. Please don't call it unless it's an emergency. But we will look. I tell these guys all the time, good cops have long careers. And I tell all the rookies when they come in here, if you're coming in here to beat people up, to abuse people, to see how tough you are and show how tough, you're not going to make it. You have to have the mindset of being a public servant. You have to love the city, and you have to love what you do, or you won't make a career out of this. And so many officers nowadays don't make a career out of it. And it's for various reasons. It could be the pay, or it could be, hey, it's not like it is on, on TV, but yeah,
Okay. Well, before we go, Precious, I'm sorry if I've alienated you for a little bit, but what's going on with the Carver? What's coming up?
Well, I guess something that's relevant to this discussion is we have the group Young Professionals at the Carver. So we have a group for young professionals, and we have a chat thread. And someone in the thread reached out and said, hey, do you have a therapist you would recommend? And that got me to thinking, oh my gosh, we've all witnessed a murder on the internet again. Maybe it'd be good if we did a group therapy session. And so I asked the group if they wanted to attend a group therapy session, and they said yes. And I reached out to a trauma counselor, Eileen Mays, and we had 10 people on the first time, and people cried and shared frustrations, and it was really good. And she helped me to understand fully that this is traumatic. Someone asked the question, at what point will I be damaged? I keep seeing this happen over and over again. At what point does this damage me? And I should put my phone down or close my laptop. And she said, the second that you saw it, you were damaged because it caused trauma. And so we decided to make it an ongoing thing. And thankfully, we got a sponsor for it. BBVA has come alongside us to bring this and open it up to the public. So we've had 2 sessions so far where people have been able to just ask very basic questions and hear from an actual trauma counselor on how to cope and process and heal and get to the point where you don't let something like this impact and change the way you see everyone around you. And that's the goal. We don't want anyone to internalize and become so angry that you see some of the things that you're seeing in other communities. But instead, figure out how to cope and channel this passion, this sense that that's not right. I've got to do something. Figure out a way, in a healthy way, to make a difference, and instead of causing further damage. So I think that's what I've been most excited about. Obviously, we have our 5th year celebrating Juneteenth, and it finally caught on with the rest of the world. So we're seeing everyone celebrating Juneteenth, which makes me so
Yeah.
happy. And I want to thank you, Marcus, because I remember the first year I ever did Juneteenth, you said, come on the radio and tell the community about it. And so it sounds like a weird name, but we know it means June 19th. It's just a mashup. It's Freedom Day. It's Jubilee Day. But I just wanted to thank you guys for being the ones to get us on air and give us a chance to tell the community about it. But that we're having a party Friday, and you're going to be there, Marcus. It's going to be a virtual Juneteenth celebration. Food with Southern Bistro, and we're gonna have curbside pickups so people can pick up their celebration food, take it on back to the house with their social distancing bubble, because we also are very aware of the times and very aware that COVID-19 is still there. It's still very real, and the curve is no longer flat or even declining, but instead it's going up. So we're being mindful of that and caring for our community by offering this online. So that's what's going on.
Appreciate it.
Well, I tell you what, this is obviously a subject can't be covered in 30 minutes. It's an ongoing communications. It's an ongoing a conversation. And Chief Parrish, I want to thank you so much. We'd like to thank you for being here with us today. Great information, great wisdom from the chief, and we certainly do appreciate it.
Thank you. Anytime. I always enjoy it.
And we thank you for coming on with us. Also, Precious, thank you so much for being here with us today. It's been a great conversation. And like I said, it's certainly not over. It's a conversation we'll have to have again. Perhaps we're going to have to take Wiregrass Strong now and just split it between COVID and our social issues and make sure that we talk about them. And, I kind of thought we might ease back on the program even more. I think now we're going to stick with it even more at this point. And I know why Marcus is laughing. But Marcus, Precious, thank you again for being with us. Marcus, thank you so much for hosting, and I appreciate your insight and also bringing these guests together for us today, because this has been a great conversation.
Thanks, Ricky.
All right, Precious, Marcus, thank you all so much for being here with us. And this has been Wiregrass Strong for the 17th day of June, and we will do it again next Wednesday, and we hope you'll be with us. We want to thank Knights Wrecker Service, big or small, they do it all, 899-3257, for giving us this half hour. And right now we're going to turn you over to normal programming. Thank you so much for being with us.